We're on? We're on. Okay. Hey Tammuz is a very important day historically. It's a day mentioned in the Tanakh in Sefer Yechezkel. We begin right away with number 1. Vahi b'shloishim shan, in the 30 years. 2 days ago was Gimel Tammuz, also 30 years from the Rebbe's Histalkus. And here the pasuk says, Sefer Yechezkel opens up, it's 30 years, Boravi. In the 4th month, Nisan Iyar Sivan Tammuz, gets us to Tammuz, B'chamisha l'chodesh, on the 5th day of the month, V'ani b'soich ha'goyla, I am in the exile, al nahar Kavor, on the river of Kavor. This is Yechezkel speaking. Yechezkel went into exile 11 years before the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. He went to exile when Nevuah took Yechanya Melech Yehuda into Golus, 11 years before the Churban. In the year 3327 from creation, Nebuchadnezzar came, he took Yechanya, he took some of the royal family, he took thousands of the best and the shenste of all the quality individuals in Eretz Yisroel to help establish his kingdom in Babylon. And he took very promising individuals. He took Chagai, he took Hananiah, Mishael, Vazariah. He took Daniel. He took Yechezkel, Mordechai, as the Megillah says. So Yechezkel was taken to Bavel 11 years before the Churban. This prophecy happened during those 11 years, while he was in Bavel, before the actual Churban. He says, I was b'seich ha'goyla al nahar Kavor. Niftuch ha'shamayim, the heavens open up, v'eda madas alikim, and I see a vision of God. Okay? So that's what we were all hoping. Gimel Tammuz, 30 years, the heavens were going to open.
In Bavel.
He was in Bavel. Look at number 2 on the left. Haya Yehaya Dvar Hashem el Yechezkel ben Buzi HaKayan. Of course, he's a Kayan. He's the son of Buzi. The Radak says Buzi is Yirmiyahu, and we discussed at times why he was called Buzi, because Yirmiyah was a descendant of Rochav, the Zoyna. And the Yidden told Yirmiyah, you're chastising us? We know what your Baba was up to. The chutzpah you have to come and tell us that due to our sins we are going to be banished from the land. So they belittled Yirmiyah, so he was nicknamed Buzi, the one who was ridiculed. So Yechezkel ben Buzi HaKayin in the land of Kastim, that's Bavel, al Nahar Kfar, on that same river. Fatihi Allah Sham Yad Hashem, the hand of Hashem was on him. So, now this is not Yechezkel's first prophecy, although it's the first one in the Sefer. He has it today. And the prophecy, of course, is the chariot. We mentioned it by the Sunday shir about Ein Kateger Nasa Saneger, about why the chariot changed from the way it's described in Perek Aleph to the way it's described later on in his Sefer. But join me in number 3, a very important statement of the Gemara, Moed Katan, Daf Chafei. When Rav Huna was being buried, Pasach Alei Rab Abba, Rab Abba eulogizes Rav Huna, and he says, Roi Hayu Rabbeinu Shetishra Olav Shchina. The Shchina should have rested upon him. Ela but Shebavel Garmalei. Bavel caused that he should not merit to have the Shechina rest upon him. Masiv Rav Nachman bar Rav Chisda. Rav Nachman, the son of Rav Chisda, asked, Va'armila, some say it was his brother, Rav Chanan bar Rav Chisda, Rav Chanan. He asked, what do you mean? You can't have prophecy in Bavel? What about Yechezkel? Haya Yehaya Dvar Hashem El Yechezkel ben Buzi HaKayin Beretz Kastim. What happened today? All those years ago. Number 2, the pasuk in Yechezkel. Yechezkel is in Bavel, and he has Vati Allah Sham Yad Hashem, the Eibish's hand rests on him. So Tafach le Avua Besandole. His father hit him on his foot. His father, Rav Chisda, hit the son, either Rav Nachman or Rav Chanan. Now, what does it mean he hit him? So Rashi has 2 pshatim. One of them is that he didn't want to embarrass his son, so he gave him a bit of a tap on his son's foot to correct him. The second pshat, said Rashi, is it's not talking about his son's shoe. It's talking about the father's shoe. The father gave the son a good zet. He gave him a good kick. He gave him a good kick to set him right. Amalei, he told him, right, so it's opposite pshatim. Either he did it softly or he did it harshly. Lava minalach, did I not tell you? Loi litroid alma, don't disturb people with your questions. Especially a time like this, where you're eulogizing Rav Huna and you're just, you have to slug up. You have to slug up the guy. My hoya. The pasuk in number 2 says hoya hoya, double expression. The Dvar Hashem, it was. So Rav Chisda says, my hoya, do you know why the double expression? Shahoya kvar, because he already had it. Yechezkel already had prophecy when he was in Eretz Yisroel. Once the connection is created in Eretz Yisroel, like the Ran explains, once the Shekhinah rests in Eretz Yisrael, it won't leave you if you go outside. If you're outside Eretz Yisrael, so then you can't start the connection. But once you have the connection in Eretz Yisrael,
Saga also has in Eretz Yisroel?
Saga, we don't know, gave prophecy outside Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael. Well, okay, good. Yaina, good. Okay, we'll discuss some of these people. One?
Daniel also?
Okay, we'll get to Daniel soon as well. If he's a Navi, there's a big steer if he's a Navi, right? Daf Gimel in Megillah to Daf Yadalad in Megillah, right? There's the steer, was Daniel a Navi or not? Okay, I want to tell you something. There is so much to talk about, okay? And someone asked that we not stay here till midnight. So let's get going. Why? I don't know I don't know why. They didn't give a reason. It was a random request. I don't know. I can't. So this is what Rav Chisda says. Rav Chisda says, "My hoya shahoya kvar." What does it mean? Yechezkel received. Yechezkel had because he had. You know why Yechezkel had prophecy while he was on the river in Bavel? Because he previously had in Eretz Yisroel. He was a Navi before Nebuchadnezzar schlepped him down. And that's why he was able to have Nevuah in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, it's a pretty clear Gemara. I will tell you though, that Rashi actually there gives another pshat. Rashi on the Gemara in Moed Katan gives two pshatim on what Rav Chisda meant. One of them is what we just described, that since there was already a revelation, so then it remains with the Navi even if he lives. The other pshat, says Rashi, it was a one-time thing. Rav Chisda is saying, you know what it means, hoya, that it was, shahoya kvar. What happened to Yechezkel happened once, will never happen again. That's the other pshat Rashi says. Rav Chisda says, you know what it means, hoya, shahoya kvar is something of the past. It doesn't happen again. And that's why Rab Abba said, Nebuch, Rav Huna could have been a prophet, he could have had the Shekhinah rest on him, but Nebuch, he was in Bavel. You're asking from Yechezkel, hoya kvar, that was a one-time thing. So that's the other pshat Rashi gives. So, of course, they're very different. According to the first pshat, according to the pshat we said, the first pshat we presented, then as long as you start in Eretz Yisroel, then you can always continue. According to the second pshat, no, it was Dafka Yechezkel, and it's not because he started in Eretz Yisroel. He had in Bavel, it was a one-time thing. So that's what the Gemara says. It seems to be a clear Gemara. The issue is that after the Gemara, over the past 1,500 years, there have been a number of individuals who have been labeled as Nevi'im, who have been nicknamed as prophets, as Nevi'im. And the question is, can there be such a thing as a Navi outside the borders of Eretz Yisroel? So the Rashba has a tshuva in number 4. This is a well-known tshuva of the Rashba, and it gets greasy to a point that I won't even read some of the things I have on the paper, right? That's exciting. That means you can get to go home earlier. No, but we're going to have a silent few minutes where everyone can read it themselves, because there are some words I can't even translate. But number 4 I can read. Number 4 is in this letter of the Rashba.
Can't leave us then.
I'm just, when we get there, we'll see. I'm just saying, setting the tone. When we get there, we'll see how things are going. But the Vart is, in the times of the Rashba, there were a few people, where the Rashba lives from 1235 to 1310 in Barcelona, in Spain. And the Rashba is one of the greatest poskim of his generation. And it came to his attention about a few people, not at one time, but throughout his tenure as Rav. A few times it happened that there were individuals that said about themselves, people said about them that they were prophets. They would say the future would come true, etc.
Rashi said in the story with Rashi. Prophesied to the general that he would come back.
Okay, with Godfried, right. There is a beautiful story in Seder HaDoros about that. There's lots of questions on that story, if it's authentic or not. But okay, but one?
Was it a Nevuah?
Right, it was just Chochmah. Now, to be so exact, the amount 3 horses and not more was pretty exact. Okay. There's lots of issues with that, because Godfried, he actually died and he never made it back to Western Europe, according to... Anyway, but let's leave that for now. Let's leave that out. Yeah. Okay, that's Baruch Hashem, we have a shir. And let's go look. So look at number 4. The Rashba in his letter says the following: Va'oid, in addition to all the stories you're telling me about these modern day prophets, shekol ze heipech min Kabbalah, this is opposite from the tradition, shekibalnu, that we received mipichach me'emes, from the true men of wisdom. She'ein ha'nevuah she'era b'chutz ha'aretz, you can't have prophecy outside Eretz Yisroel. Ve'eich namin b'mashe soiser mashe noida l'chachmi so mepi hanavim. How could we believe the stories which are being said, which contradicts what the Chachamim know from prophets? Ad shehutzru cholayim atil, and he's quoting a Mechilta, that how did Moshe give prophecy? Moshe was outside Eretz Yisroel. And it says, B'nevuas Moshe, shezeh haya kodim sheniskad sheha'aretz. By the Mechilta says about Moshe that only after the Jews entered Eretz Yisroel do we have a rule that the Shekhinah will only rest on an individual in the Holy Land. Before they came to Eretz Yisroel, right, then anyone could be a Navi, wherever you are. That's what the Mechilta says. Similarly to we have, before Yidden came to Eretz Yisroel, you could have a Mishkan in the desert, you could be Karbonis in the desert. Then they came to Eretz Yisroel, you can't do it outside. When they came to Yerushalayim, it was only Yerushalayim, etc. The Mechilta gives all these examples. So the Mechilta says, the Mechilta is a halachic medrash, going to the Tana, it's attributed to the Tana, Rabbi Yishmael, the friend of Rabbi Akiva. In Parshas Boy, there's a long piece there. And I actually printed it, but it would have been a 3rd paper. Together with the map would make 4 papers, and that would have scared everybody off. Which one? And we don't have paper. And we don't have paper. So, but that's what the Rashba is referring to when the Mechilta says, you know how Moshe was a prophet? So the Mechilta says you have to say it was Koidim Sheniskacha, before they conquered Eretz Yisrael, so then you can be a Navi in the desert too. But once Eretz Yisrael became the Yidden's land, boom, Eretz Yisrael is the one and only place. And finishes the Rashba, and B'nevuas Yechezkel, how was Yechezkel a Navi in the exile? Because she's Chila Ba'aretz, it started while he was in the land. So she's quoting the Gemara in Moed Katan we saw in number 3, explaining the simple pshat that what happened to Yechezkel was he started when he was in Eretz Yisrael. You know, Hagar, when Hagar was sent out of the house, she saw a malach in Parshas Lech Lecha. And she said, Hagam haloim ro'isi acharei roi. I'm seeing a malach here after I saw malachim in the house of Avraham. So the simple pshat, she's saying, I saw in the house of Avraham, I didn't expect to see here. But some Mefarshim hold where she was then was not Eretz Yisroel. So she was wondering, how can I see malachim here? So she says, I'm seeing here acharei roi, because I already saw in Avram's house. Since I saw in Eretz Yisroel, I can continue to see outside Eretz Yisroel. That's how they learn that pasuk. And that's the Gemara number 3, that's the Rashba number 4. So the Rashba is saying, Yechezkel because he started in Eretz Yisroel. Moshe because before the Yidden entered Eretz Yisroel. But other than that, the Shekhinah can only rest in Eretz Yisroel. So how can you have these modern day prophets in Spain? Fine, so that's the letter of the Rashba. Look at number 5 for a second. Number 5 is from the Kuzari. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, one of the greatest of the early Rishonim.
How many prophets that he was referencing?
I'm going to get there. Oh, don't worry. That is going to be the shmutz of the shir. You know, the shir always has this.
So is he doing it like he's angry that they're?
Yeah. You're going to see how angry he is in a second.
Wow. So
I just
going
first
back
quoted
to
the
those
tame
other
part.
shirim where they're trying to shut down the Genesis and
By the way, the Chidah is going to be the big defender over here, as usual. You know, there's ois v'hadar levusha. There's the ois of the Torah, which is, you know, the lomdus and the halacha, and the hadar. Then there's the beautiful, the interesting things. First we quote the one of the halachic arguments of the Rashba. We'll get to the story in a moment. But number 5 is a statement from the Kuzari, from Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, one of the greatest of the early Rishonim, a great philosopher, a grammarian, a poet, etc., etc. According to many, he was the father-in-law of the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra was in his house, and he saw that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi was writing a poem, and part of the poem was unfinished. He couldn't find like the perfect rhyme that fits with all the other cheshbonos, and Rabbi Yehuda Halevi had left the poem unfinished. And Ibn Ezra, you know, in the middle of the night went and he finished it off. Rabbi Halevi found it in the morning. He was so overwhelmed by the wisdom of the Ibn Ezra, he took him as a son-in-law. Anyhow, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi wrote the Kuzari, a famous philosophical work, the Kuzari. The Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon were big fans of the Kuzari. In fact, they said that in the Choyves Halvavos, which is written before the Kuzari, there's a part which speaks about the Yichud of Hashem. Both the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon encouraged people that don't learn that part of Shar HaBitachon. Where if you want to learn about Yichud Hashem, learn it from the Kuzari. Both the Baal Shem Tov and the Vilna Gaon separately advise that to people. Anyhow, so the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the Kuzari, is a dialogue between the Chaver, the Chacham, and the king of the Khazars. There was the famous kingdom of the Khazars, which allegedly, let's say about 1200 years ago, there was a kingdom and the king wanted to embrace a certain religion for his entire kingdom, and he summoned a rabbi, a galach, and a Muslim galach. It sounds like a joke, right? They walked into a bar. Anyhow, and they debated. And apparently he was so impressed by the arguments of the Yid that the entire community embraced Yiddishkeit, the kingdom of the Khazars. Anyhow, so that's the backdrop of the story that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi poetically chose to write his philosophical work of the Kuzari. But he writes in number 5, Amar Achaver, Kol mi shenisnabe, anyone that ever gave prophecy, loy nisnabe kiyim bo oy ba'avura. The prophecies was only in Eretz Yisroel or for the sake of Eretz Yisroel. This is a big one. It doesn't have to be in Eretz Yisroel. If it's for the sake of Eretz Yisroel, it's good enough. That's what he says. And he says, Avraham Avinu had prophecy before he went in. The Eibishter spoke to Avraham before he went to Eretz Yisroel. Even simply in the Psukim, Avraham went from Ur Kasdim to Charan, and the Eibishter appears to him in Charan and says, no, time to come to Eretz Yisroel. The Eibishter spoke to him before he came. It seems from the Psukim, Avraham never saw him. It seems the first time Avraham saw the Eibishter was only when he came to Eretz Yisroel. And it says, when he came in and he saw God, he built him his Be'ach LaHashem Hanira Elov, because the Eibishter appeared to him. And many point out that even though Avraham was a Navi before, but it was only in a way of Shemiah, an oifen of hearing. The Re'iyah, to see God, he was only able to perceive that when he came to Eretz Yisroel, and he built a special mizbeach for that purpose. Rashi learns he built a mizbeach for a different reason, and the Rebbe has a sikh about that. But the simple reading of the psukim is Avraham, before he came to Eretz Yisroel, it was in a way of shmiya, hearing. He comes in, La Hashem Hanira Elov, the Eibishter appears to him. But the shayla is, how was Avraham a Navi before he came in? So says the Kuzri, I'll tell you why. Nisna ba'Avraham Kadesha Yarvaba. What did the Eibishter come and tell Avraham? Go to Eretz Yisroel. The whole prophecy was for the purpose of Eretz Yisroel. So the Kuzri said that's good enough. Then he says, what about Yechezkel? How did Yechezkel give Nevuah? Today's prophecy, Hey Tammuz, the Merkava. Yechezkel has it on the river in Bavel. So the Gemara gave a pshat and Rashi gave two pshatim. Says the Kuzari a third thing altogether. Yechezkel miponeha. It was so that they say miponeha means for Eretz Yisroel. Yechezkel's prophecies was to encourage the Jews. We're going to go back one day to encourage the Yid not to give hope. One day we're going to go back. It was for the sake of Eretz Yisroel. And he says Daniel as well. So he says Daniel was a Navi. And how did Daniel give Nevuah in Bavel? It's not because he started in Eretz Yisroel. It's because of this idea of Ba'avur was for the sake of Eretz Yisroel. Now I don't know where in Gemara, it's not in Gemara, I don't know where in Medrash this comes from. It seems like the Kuzari feels it in his bones. I don't know what his raya is, but he creates a whole new arena. As long as the Nevuah is for the sake of Eretz Yisroel, it's good enough. That's Pshat in Avraham. So I would have said for Avraham, you could say the same thing as Moshe. Like the Mechilta says, before the Yidden came to Eretz Yisroel wasn't a condition, wasn't a factor. And for Yechezkel, I would have said, but the Gemara says.
Daniel.
And for Daniel, there happens to be a contradiction if Daniel was a Navi, but he definitely saw visions. So what would I say for Daniel? So either you would say this, or I would say Daniel had a Nevuah in Eretz Yisroel before Nebuchadnezzar chapped him. There was a reason he was taken. There was a reason he was taken by Nebuchadnezzar. Because Nebuchadnezzar saw who he was. In fact, throughout Nebuchadnezzar's life, Daniel was his favorite. Right? When Nebuchadnezzar had his great edifice, his image, which is Machlekes, Rabbeinu Tam and the Reef, was Avodah Zarah or not. But the Gemara in Sanhedrin describes how he tipped off Daniel. He said, "Get out of town. Don't be here. Don't be here." Hanani Mishav Azariah, I'm happy to test them. I'll throw him in if I need. But I want to get out of town. So I would imagine that possibly Daniel was a Navi before he was taken. Just like Yechezkel.
What's the Lashon Megillah?
The Gemara in Megillah says that Daniel saw a vision. He says that my friends did not see it. Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi did not see the vision, but they shook. So the Gemara says like this. On the one hand, they were greater than Daniel, because they were Nevi'im and Daniel wasn't. Those are the words in Aramaic. Inu adifi minei, the inu Nevi'ah, they were prophets and he wasn't. But the Gemara says, but he saw this vision and they didn't. So the Gemara asks famously, if they didn't see the vision he saw, why'd they shake? And the Gemara says, even though they didn't see the sword, the neshama above sword, that's why they shook. But it sounds like Daniel was lacking the level of prophet. But what do you mean? He saw what they didn't see. So if they were Nevi'im, how was he not a Navi? In addition, on Daf Yudalad in Megillah, the Gemara there says there were 48 prophets that the Yidden had. Well, the Gemara doesn't give a list, but Rashi gives a list. There's different Mefarshim argue on some of the Rashi quotes Daniel. So there's many answers to that. Let's stick. The Kuzari, what? It works for Moshe for sure. It was all preparing the Yidden to go to Eretz Yisroel.
What about like Bilam?
With the Kuzari, you don't need the Mechilta, you don't need the Gemara.
What about like somebody like Bilam, for example? It wasn't necessarily about Eretz Yisroel, it was more about the Yidden. Stopping them from going into Eretz Yisroel.
It was for the purpose of him to give them brachas.
The negative side.
It was for him to give them brachas.
Doesn't say Lashon,
Yeah, I threw that on the pace. What?
Started off in Eretz
Does this
Yisroel.
answer the last
Bilam,
people?
maybe.
Well, he lived in Aram, which is northeast of Eretz Yisrael.
Because he answered the last people?
Wait. We're going to, by the end of this year, you'll see much more insight. You'll have numerous answers to these questions. So let's get going. In the early machlekes of the Chassidim and the Misnagdim, there were a number of kuntresim pamphlets that were being disseminated with horrific information in them. There was something called Bein Hashitim, between the lines, which was officially a commentary that a chassid wrote on the Tur and the Beis Yosef, a scholarly commentary. But in it, there were some shocking statements. there was a whole paragraph how it's a mitzvah to be moitzi zera levatol, a mitzvah to give wasted seed, and we don't know who wrote it, but the Misnagdim went through the roof. They said, you see, these Chassidim, they're warped. You know, it was, the Misnagdim publicized a drasha where a Chassid apparently, or a Rebbe, got up and said that, a pasuk can tell him, God, I want to do your will, but your Torah is in my stomach. And the Chassid, the Rebbe, translated, Eibishter, I want to serve you, but all of those pages of Shas and Poskim are in my stomach and they're holding me back from serving you properly. God, I want to do your will, but your Torah is in my stomach. And it's as if the Chassid was saying that all of this Gemara is a hindrance to Avodas Hashem. It can distract you from proper service of God. And the Mishnah, you look at this, you see Reform Judaism. I mean, right, this is, you'll see where I'm going with this. There, in one of these books, it actually had a story. These were things that were given around under the table. That, you know, the good shmutz that they had 200 years ago. There was a story that there were some people in shul talking. Some heavy misnagdim at that time were talking degradingly about Chassidim, and there was a Yid in shul who overheard them and said, "You think you know stories? These people were saying that the Chassidim were machlif neshayseim. They were wife swappers. Every night they would swap wives with each other. That's what they were talking about." So there was a guy overheard in shul. He said, "You guys are just telling stories. You want to see something? You want to see it? Come with me." He said, "Come with me tomorrow night, like at 2 a.m. And he gave him a time and a place, and they met up. And this guy, the stranger, was there with these few young misnagdim, and they were all excited to see. They couldn't believe what they're going to see, right? And he says, come, we're going to go to the Chassid's house. You'll never believe it. Till now, you're just saying stories. Now you're going to see it for real. You're going to see it for real. He takes them to the window. He says, look, be quiet. Look through the window. They look through the window. And you know what the Chassid was doing? He was sitting on the floor. He was saying, Tikkun Chatzos, tears falling down his cheeks. And the guy tells, this is the guy that you were talking about in shul. What are you guys hacking at China? Anyhow, so in one of these pamphlets, which I saw years ago, and I haven't been able to get hold of it again, there was a debate, an alleged debate between Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk, one of the greatest of the Chassidic Rebbes, and some big Rabbanim. And they challenged him. You say that the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid and all these tzaddikim, they had Ruach HaKodesh. What about the fact you can't have Ruach HaKodesh outside Eretz Yisroel? What about the Gemara in Moed Katan? Don't you know? Even the Kuzri stretches it to, if it's for the sake of Eretz Yisroel, but Stam prophecy in Ukraine, in Poland, it's not happening. So Rabbi Elimelech said, you're quoting to me a Gemara in Moed Katan, I'll quote you a Gemara in Megillah. The Gemara in Megillah, Daf Yud Dalet, says, Vatilbish Esther Malchus. Esther wore Malchus royal clothes. Says the Gemara, it means she wore Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. She wore the Holy Spirit, even though she was in Persia. Oh, let's get you some copies of it. Here's the first page. Just one page tonight, sorry. How was Esther a Nevuah in Persia, in Shushan, in Paras? So Rabbi Elimelech was saying that it's machlekes. There's a Gemara Megillah doesn't hold this Gemara Moed Katan. It's a machlekes, and so no, like many things are a debate. So their response was, no. Don't you know the medrash that Esther was a little girl in Eretz Yisroel with Mordechai? She was schlepped to Bavel with Nebuchadnezzar as well, as a baby girl. And maybe when she was a little girl, she had prophecy in Eretz Yisroel. So we apply the same idea that once the connection has been made to Yisroel, it won't go away even if you leave. That was before the Yidden went into Eretz Yisroel. Yeah. So we have that mechilta. So now I saw this a long time ago, 10 years ago probably, and I couldn't find it again to see if he responded. But that was a debate that he had to have, and this was I don't know, even if she was a girl, to say that she was a prophet, it's a bit of a... Anyhow, okay. So, what was the Rashba dealing with in Spain in the 1200s? So, the letter of number 4, 6, and 7 is all excerpts from the same letter of the Rashba. It was about a guy whose name was Nissim, the son of Avraham, from Avila. Avila is a city in Spain right next to Madrid. If you look, the reason we have the map is for the next guy I'm going to talk about, but in Spain, in the middle you have Madrid, where the star is, so around where the M is of Madrid is a city called Avila. In America they call it Avila, but everywhere else in the world they call it Avila. And there was a guy there called Reb Nissim, and he was allegedly a Kabbalist. Malachim were coming and telling him explanations in Chumash, very esoteric, deep Kabbalah ideas. And the Rashba was asked about him. So says the Rashba number 6, Va'ata, and now. This happens in the middle of the 1290s. The middle of the 1290s is when this happened. Va'ata agalach mal tell you, kizek shisha chadoshim, it's 6 months, over bekan nar choser lev. There was a young man lacking heart. Ubeyada, in his hand, he had a letter. Chasum is signed, miyad harav Rabdon. Rabdon, who's Rabdon? Rabdon Ashkenazi, Rabdon from Germany. He was one of the great students of the Maharam of Rothenburg. And the Maharam of Rothenburg, his life ended in captivity. And the Maharam of Rothenburg, some of his students were murdered. The Mordechai, the Gois Maimonides were murdered in massacres in Germany. The Rosh fled to Spain, and so did Rabdon. He also fled to Spain from Germany. And the Rashba knew him. And apparently this Rabdon wrote a letter supporting this potential prophet and potential Messiah, at least potential prophet, Nissim ben Avraham. So says the Rashba, v'chiraisia, when I saw it, when I saw this letter signed from Rabdon, it was hard to see it. Yan choshvu rabim ezel lekalas hadas. People thought it was a foolish letter from Rabdon. Something which requires much investigation. And the truth is, as much as you'll investigate, it's never enough. A person that's called a chacham will testify that this guy is true and everything. It's almost like the letter, the way I'm understanding, that people thought that Rabdon was naive to openly give an endorsement to this self-proclaimed prophet. Especially this self-proclaimed prophet was not known to be a scholar. And his claim was, how does he know all these esoteric explanations? From God. I'm not a big scholar, but Malachim came and they told it to me.
Proof is on the podium.
And he has an issue now with Rabdon. Why Rabdon endorsed the guy? This isn't appropriate for someone who has a clear mind. Rak only those that are swift of heart, and those that their hands will not bring them success. So the Rashba at that point was attacking a guy called Reb Nissim ben Avraham of Avila. But in the letter, the Rashba says a couple years ago there was a much bigger threat from a fellow by the name of R Avraham Abulafia. And that's the guy we're going to talk about for the next few minutes. And Mitzvah, we're going to see some fascinating things. And at the end, we'll tie everything together as usual. Although what the time will be at that point, I cannot tell you. But R Avraham Abulafia. R Avraham Abulafia is born in the year 1240. Now, when I was a kid, I read about him in an English book I had at home in Australia, and I became obsessed with him. I loved his story. And also, he was from a prominent family, the Abulafia family. Well, there were many of the great Rishonim. There was Reb Tudrus Abulafia, a great Kabbalist. The Rameh, Rab Meir Halevi, his last name was Abulafia, etc., etc. But this is Reb Avraham Abulafia, who starts his life in Saragossa in Spain. So you see, Spain is on the left of the map. So you see Zaragoza not too far from Barcelona. So in the eastern part of Spain, the top right side of Spain. Spain's on the left-hand side with the gray. The top right side of Spain is Zaragoza. So that is where Rabbi Avraham grows up in 1240. Why 1240 is significant is because that's the Hebrew year 5000. 1240 is when we went into the year 5000, which means we entered the 6th millennia. And he felt that this is Mashiach's time, and this is time for Mashiach. This is already time for Mashiach. He was and that was when his birthday was, so he was very proud of that. His Rebbe, when he was younger, it was his father, it seems, who taught him. His family moved from Zaragoza, I believe, to Toledo, which is somewhat central Spain, not on the map. But he's living a quiet life, he's studying. That's when he studies, like everybody, Tanakh and Gemara and Halacha. And in Spain, Bechlal, the chinuch was a lot more colorful than in Germany and France. Learned languages, astronomy. He writes that he learned medicine and all. His father dies, Nebuch, becomes a Yosim. Now he starts traveling. He has a desire. At this point, we don't know if he's involved in Kabbalah. At this point, we don't know what his involvement was. He has a desire to find the 10 lost tribes and the Sambatyon River. We had a shiur once a couple of years ago about that. The Sambatyon River. There's a river called the Sambatyon River, which a whole week is volatile, and Shabbos it's calm. And in Medrashim, Yerushalmi, and it's linked the 10 lost tribes to the Sambatyon. And he went to search. So he travels all the way to Eretz Yisroel. So that was the Akdama story. He goes all the way from Spain to Eretz Yisroel, so all the way on the right side of the map, which is a long journey. He comes to Eretz Yisroel, and he's in Akko, and the situation there was not very hospitable. There was a war raging, and Bechlal Yisrael was not in a good state since it was massacred by the Crusades. This is around the year 1260. Eretz Yisroel was not in a good state, and he realizes that this is dangerous. He can't continue his path to find the Sambatyon River or the 10 lost tribes. It's time to return back to reality. He's still a bocher. It's time to turn back to reality. So he starts his journey back, and he goes to Greece. So you see, Greece is not too far from Eretz Yisroel, relatively to Spain. He goes to Greece, gets married in Greece. He gets married in Greece. Fine. From Greece, he writes this himself. From Greece, he goes to Italy. In Italy, he meets up with a Rishon by the name of Rabbi Hillel of Verona, who's a student of Rabbeinu Yonah. Anyhow, this Rabbi Hillel of Verona was a major fan of Rambam and Moreh Nevuchim. And this is where R Avraham Abulafia throws himself into philosophy, particularly the Rambam, and he becomes infatuated with the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim. And he travels around Italy teaching. After he masters Moreh Nevuchim, he travels and teaches Moreh Nevuchim to anyone that wants to even listen. He's traveling from place to place. He's teaching everyone Moreh Nevuchim. He spends a bit of time in Italy. He finally makes it back to Spain, not to Zaragoza, to Barcelona. So he's made it all the way back. He went to Eretz Yisroel, then slowly he goes back. Greece, Italy. By the time he comes back to Spain, he's already married, he's already a chashuv, a philosopher, he's an expert in the Rambam's Moreh Nevuchim, and he loves philosophy, but he has a passion to learn Kabbalah. In Barcelona, there was a group of mystics already founded by the Ramban, a generation earlier. The Rambam was a huge makubal. Some of the Ramban's contemporaries and students said that the Ramban went overboard. There's a letter of the Rivosh where it says that some accuse the Ramban of going overboard in Kabbalah. You know, like Reb Chaim Brisker said about Reb Leivik, the Rebbe's father, such a cup and you spend it on Chassidus. So some said a similar thing about the Ramban. Went overboard in Kabbalah, but the Rambam was in Barcelona for many years till he had to run away after his debate. We had a share about that as well. There were a group of mystics in Barcelona. So in the end of the 1260s or so, R Avraham Abulafia makes it to Barcelona, and now he wants to learn Kabbalah. And he becomes a huge Kabbalist. And what's unique about him is he unites philosophy and Kabbalah together. Many Mukabbalim were not fans of the Rambam's Mer Nevuchim, to say the least. And he wrote a sefer called Moira HaMoira, the guide to the guide. He wrote him on Mer Nevuchim. But within Kabbalah, he writes that there's generally two schools of Kabbalah thought. He writes it black and white in some of his form. There's learning about the 10 Sfiris, which was big in those days, how the Eibishter deals with the world, how the Eibish godliness and Welt interact. The Sfiris, fine. But then there's something called Sefer Yetzirah that speaks about the Aleph Beis, the Oisius. And the Oisius lead to revelation. They lead to experiencing a prophecy with the Eibishter. And he divides these two chachmas, and he says you have to start off with number one, with the Sfiris. That's what you start with. But the ultimate is actually the Sefer Yetzirah brand of Kabbalah, about the Aleph Beis, the letters, and to lead to Nevuah. And he became very excited by the fact that you're able to be a Navi these days. He speaks about prophecies that he had. And around the year 1270, he's 30 years old, he says he had a prophecy to go and convert the Pope. He didn't go at that time, but he did go 10 years later. 10 years later, he was in Italy. He went to Rome to convert the Pope. He had the prophecy again. Apparently the Pope was not in Rome. The Pope was in another city. Sorrento, I don't know where he was. In some city, wherever he was, in the Italian Alps, you know. Who was it? One of the first, there was an emperor who would have his servants go to the Alps and bring a whole a buggy full of ice. No, full of ice so you could have snow cones, so you could have ice drinks, you know. They should go to them. They bring enough ice in the wagon, some will still be frozen by the time they make it back. Anyhow, the Pope went somewhere, and Reb Avraham, the Pope heard that Reb Avraham was looking for him. So the Pope said, Reb Avraham, if you come any closer, we're going to burn you publicly. Finished. He wasn't in Nispol. He went to where the Pope was, and apparently the Pope died that night from a heart attack. Reb Avraham then went to Rome, and he was thrown in prison. But they didn't kill him. They let him out after about a month, 4 weeks or something. After the activities in northern Italy, he went down south to Sicily. You see Palermo in Sicily, in the bottom of Italy you have the island Sicily. In Palermo he was very active. And he had a group of students, and he was telling them that there is prophecy today. And more than that, he said, I'm a prophet. And it seems like he declared himself as Mashiach as well. So the community of Palermo sent a letter to the Rashba in Barcelona in the end of the 1280s. And they said, what do we do with this guy? The Rashba wrote letters to him that were apparently so sharp they were never printed. But in our letter we have something. Join me in number 7. In number 7, again, this letter that we do have was written a few years later about this new guy, Reb Nissim from Avila. But the Rashba makes reference in number 7. I've seen these things before, v'shamati. I've seen these people before, these self-declared prophets. The Echad Mehem, you know, one of them was Oisai Hanavel, Shem Mishaim Avraham. His name was Avraham. He was a Navi, he was a Mashiach in Sicily. That's Sicily. And he seduced with his lies many Yidden. And if I wouldn't have stopped it in his tracks with all of the writings that I wrote to with all the communities, he would have destroyed with all of his fake words. Rabbi Avraham was known as a meditator, and the Rashba says he would mix in, he would take psukim and the words of Chachamim and Gematrius and mix everything together, and he would also take Dvarim Amit, he would also take good things from other, but mix it all together, and it was very convincing. And if I wouldn't have stopped him in his tracks, who knows how much damage he would have done. That's what the Rashba says about Avraham Abulafia. Because of that, Rabbi Avraham Abulifia's Sfarim were not learned in Spanish yeshivas of Kabbalah for many, many years. In fact, what?
Olivia's a last name.
Abulafia. Yeah, sure, it's a last name. Abulafia.
Last names?
Yeah.
What?
Abulafia.
Yeah.
The head. So join me in number 8. In number 8, this is a letter Rabbi Avraham Abulafia wrote. Rabbi Avraham Abulafia wrote this letter to somebody by the name of Rabbi Yehuda. We have the letter, it's called V'zois LeYehuda. It's about 15 pages in a nice print. And he describes a lot of his beliefs about Kabbalah, and he writes in number 8, Kosavti gam ken zois geras hashenis. You know why I wrote this? Loidia lochem, to tell you, my brother. Ki masha choshev harab Reb Shloime ben Avram Zal, that's the Rashba, Reb Shloime, the son of Avram, Ibn Aderes. What he wrote al inyoni, about me, oy masha shom, what he heard about me, hakol hevel v'rois, for everything he wrote his Baba Maisis. The Rashba was critical that Avraham Abulafia misunderstood Kabbalah, and he was a charlatan, etc. So it says Rabbi Avraham Abulafia, the Rashba, he heard things about me, people told him things, it was all fake news. Hevel v'rois ruach, it was all untruth. V'haraya, I'll bring you a proof. Ani shevach lokel kvar sedarti. The Rashba accuses me of being an Amoritz. I already was Mesader all my learning. I learned Mikra, I learned Diktur Kanaf, and I was Mechaber Sfarim, etc. And he writes a whole justification for himself, and the Rashba completely misjudged me. Look in the next line. He writes this, in his letter, he writes something which is quite eyebrow raising. He believed that many Mukubalim got it wrong. He says, the Rashba thinks that I don't understand Kabbalah. Fakert, I have a deeper appreciation than anybody else. I will tell you, the Baalei Kabbalah HaSfiris, those that only learn about the Sfiris, Choshvu, they try to be Meyachad Hashem, to bring out the Eibish's unity. Livroyach me'emunas hashlish, to run away from the belief of the Trinity of the Christians. But fakert isru, instead of having a Trinity 3, they make the Eibush to have 10 parts. The Eibush has 10 spheres. They misunderstand. U'kumoisha agoyim oimrim, hu shloisha, that he's 3, vashloisha, right? The Christians have all the philosophies, how it's really all one. So to mix as Baalei Kabbalah, they believe and they say Olikus is Eser spheres and the 10 are really one. They're multiplying, making to so many parts. That is made up of so many details, etc. So he was very sharp, and he said people think that I got it wrong. Fakert. I think most Kabbalists today got it wrong. He says you have to be able to learn the Kabbalah of the Spheres and graduate to the Kabbalah of Sefer Yetzirah, of the Isis, of the Aleph Beis, and then you'll truly understand Yichud Hashem. Look what he writes in number 9. What Avraham Abulafia writes about his students. He says, Beroimi, when I was in Rome, I taught Shnei Zikne, I taught Meir Nevuchim to 2 of the Zkanim. Reb Tzidka v'Reb Yeshaya Baalei Brisi Zal. Reb Tzidka is actually known as the Shibolei Haleket. V'Itzlichu b'I K'tzas Hatzlocha, and they were doing pretty good. They were good students. V'Nifru, they both died. They both died very quick to their learning. Now he says, Kainim Hoy Harbe, they were very old. There were others who said that it could be the learning itself caused them, but I don't know. He says they were old, we'll take his word for it. But how that point they both started learning with him, and boom, they both passed on. Then he says, in Barcelona, I learned with 2 people. One was the old man, Reb Kleinmus, he was an Adam Gadol. And then there was a Bacher, a Maskil, a Maven. He really understood. He was a great boy. His name was Yudah. Hamachuna Salmon. He's actually the letter The letter that number 8 was to this Rabbi Yehuda. Number 9 is from a different one of his Sfarim where he recounts his Talmidim. But this Rabbi Yehuda later on is going to be the person that he wrote number 8 to.
Is that Rabbi Klonimus?
No. There's many Klonimus. And he had tremendous hatzlacha. In Burgos is a city in Spain. I taught 2 people, a Rav and a Talmud. There was Rav Moshe Sifner, Adam Gadol, but and then he says, the Shem Talmud Reb Shem Tov, Bacher, Nechmud, great. Okay, he's speaking about, but he says, Habachrus Mona min alimud. He was too young and it held him back from learning. A little bit. Kabbalist Chitzon is both him and his teacher. So they were Shvachat Talmidim. But then he moves on. Then, B'Medina Shalom, I taught 2 people. One of them was Reb Shmuel Hanavi, that was Makabel for me, Ktsas Kabbalist. And this is the main thing. Vasheni Rabbi Yosef Jigatilia. Rabbi Yosef Jigatilia is a very famous Kabbalist because he wrote the Sefer Sharei Oira. Reb Chaim of Volozhin was once asked, there's a chiyuv to learn Kol HaTorah Kula, but there has to be a measurement of what exactly do I have to learn. So there's, as far as Pnimis HaTorah, someone asked him, halachically, which form do I have to learn in order to fulfill the mitzvah of knowledge of the entire Torah? You don't have to learn everything. So Reb Chaim told him, Zoyar and Sharei Oira, from Yosef Jigatilia. Reb Yosef Jigatilia was the Rebbe of Reb Moshe de Leon, who discovered the Zoyar. Okay? So Reb Yosef Jigatilia is a student of Avraham Abulafia. That's what Rabbi Avraham writes. He says, "Beloy Safak Hitzliach Hatzlacha Mufla," that he learned before me, and he added from his own koyach and from his knowledge tremendous Hashem Oye Imay. He writes beautifully about Rabbi Yosef Jigatilia. Rabbi Yosef Jigatilia in his forum never quotes Rabbi Avraham Abulafia. He never quotes. If you learned Rabbi Yosef Jigatilia's forum, you wouldn't know he had any shaykhs to Rabbi Avraham Abulafia. In number 9, in one of Rabbi Avram's forum, he makes mention that, boy, did he learn by me. So why would Rabbi Yosef not have mentioned it? So I'll tell you why. After the Rashba put this guy in Cherem, you know what happened in Palermo? The city of Palermo in Italy gets a letter from the Rashba that this guy is a liar and a fake and etc., etc. They threw him out of town. He was thrown out of the entire island. So where's he going now? He ain't going back to Spain. You know, after the he ain't going back to Spain. So he went to Malta. Underneath Palermo, you have Malta. But apparently, even in Malta, it wasn't so smooth. If you zoom in, right next to Malta, there's a tiny, tiny island called Comino. If you go on a map, you will see the island is tiny. Apparently, he was in Cherem pretty much from all the areas of Italy, even Malta. He had to go to this tiny little island that was so small that no one cared if he was there. That was the last anybody saw of him in the year 1291, the age of 51 years old. And he disappeared. Some believe he's buried on that island Comino. I don't know, it's a tiny island, there's like nothing there. There's like nothing there. It's a bare island, doesn't mean he's not buried there. Sorry. But
We have kids.
Yeah, that's a good question.
we don't know. So this Rabbi Avraham passes away. He was in his community that he worked in for a few years in Palermo were so hostile to him, they threw him out, they were makrim him. He ends up as a nomad, he dies in a tiny island. And for the next couple of centuries, people were very wary of his Sfarim. He has maybe 30 Sfarim or something. In fact, many of them weren't printed. They're sitting in the Vatican. His manuscripts. On Kabbalah, incredible things on Kabbalah. For quite a while, nobody learned his Sfarim. The Rashba pretty much closed the case. However, funnily enough, about 500 years ago, when there was the great movement of Kabbalah, the Arizal, but even before him, the Ramak, Reb Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak's brother-in-law, Reb Shlomo El Kabatz, all of a sudden they're all quoting Reb Avraham Abulafia. Not by name. No one quotes his name, they don't quote his, they quote his ideas, though sometimes verbatim. Wow. The Ramak, Reb Moshe Cordovero quotes him. The Reb Shlomo El Kabatz quotes the Sefer. The Reb Shlomo El Kabatz quotes the Sefer that he said a beautiful idea about Moshe's name. Mem Shin Hey. Mem Shin Hey. Right? So there's what we call the hidden part of the word. There's from the Mem, the Shin, and the Hey, you have hidden a Mem, and then from the Shin, the Yud and the Nun, and then an Aleph from the Hey, which gets you Me'ayin. And there's an idea, HaChochma, which is Moshe, Ma'ayin to Motzei. It was a beautiful idea. Reb Shlomo El Kabatz brings it, and he quotes the Sefer. Not the name of R Avraham Abulafia, he quotes his Sefer, he quotes it. The Ramah quotes it. Reb Chaim Vital wrote many Sfarim. Many of his works is what he heard from the Arizal, but he also wrote some of his own Sfarim. One of them is Shari Kedusha, how to be holy. And over there's an entire section, which is word for word, from one of the last Sfarim Avraham Abulafia wrote. And you should know, in the early editions of Reb Chaim Vital's Sefer Shari Kedusha, it was omitted. People took it out. But now it's back in. So all of a sudden everyone's quoting him. So look on the next page. On number 12 is from the Chidah. The Chidah in his Sefer Shem HaGdolim. In number 12, on the Chaye Olam Haba, that's one of the works, one of the many, many works of Reb Avraham. He says, Hu Sefer Shechiber Harav Avraham Abulafia. Be'igul Shem Ab, and then find the 72-letter name. Re'isiv, I saw al-klaf, I saw on parchment, ksav yad, handwritten. V'da, you should know that the Rashba in his letters and the Rav Yosher, Yosef Shloimo Reife, Yosher of Kondaya, was an incredible person. We spoke about him once in the early 1600s. B'sefer Mitzaref L'chov, the Yosher of Kondaya was a great philosopher. He was a student of Galileo, actually, and he went to Padua to learn astronomy by him. But he was a great fellow. And both of them, Zilzuluboy, both the Rashba and the Yosher of Kondaya. Kondaya is a city in Crete, if you want to know. If you look on the map, in between Malta and Israel, there's a little Greek island called Crete. And on the top of Crete, there's a Heraklion. But in Hebrew, they called Kondaya. Anyhow, whatever. Both the Rashba and the Yosher, they pull the rug from under the feet of Reb Avraham. But in truth, Kushtak, I have to tell you the truth. I saw a big rabbi, Mimore Rosin, from the teachers of secrets, or Yisroel Godel Shemai, and they say he's talking about Reb Chaim Vital, who quote extensively, verbatim from him in the Shari Kedusha. After Reb Chaim's words, who's going to change? He was Makar of the Sefer Anizker, V'toishel Yamina, and his right hand saved him. So the Chidah says that Reb Avraham Abulafia is back. He's back in business, and the last couple of decades have actually been printing his manuscripts. Wow. Yeah, now. 1990s. So the Chidah brought him back. Listen.
Who else but the Chidah? So
hold on.
He says his name, he puts his name in there.
The Rashba was not just Stam Rav. The Rashba was a very qualified Kabbalist. The Rashba's students write about him that he was a great Mekubal. If the Rashba accused Reb Avraham of misunderstanding Kabbalah, then there's something you can't just do away with that. And
Abulafia's original argument back that
it's shmooze, bad information. Maybe.
You mean he said the president of Ukraine is Putin?
Hold on, I would assume the Rashba knew him personally because the Rashba lived in Barcelona, and that's where Reb Avraham went on his journey in Kabbalah. Really began in Barcelona. In 1270, when he had his dream to convert the Pope, that was in Barcelona. The Rashba was the rabbi in Barcelona then. It sounds like they knew each other from. I don't know.
How did that back on board with him afterwards?
Who?
The Chidah was back on board, Chaim Vital and everybody.
For hundreds of years, they. I don't know, but Reb Shlomo El Kabatz quotes him, and he quotes his Sefer. So he wasn't afraid. But apparently, definitely in the century after the Rashba's words, he's in Barcelona and in Spain, they weren't learning his Torah. They weren't learning any of his stuff. But over time, he's back. So the question is, but what about the Rashba's claim that you can't have Shechina in Chutz La'aretz? Okay, so that's the question. So if you look in number 11, This is a note from in Likutei Sichos. It's in the back of Likutei Sichos. Chelek Ches, all the way in the back. The Rebbe says like this: Kumedum, it seems to me, Sha'af sheherich Rambam be'inyan anavu proteh. The Rambam is ma'irich in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah how to become a navi, and all the details. But lo hiskir, the Rambam does not mention you have to be in Israel dafka, or even haschalos al kaponim. He doesn't mention at least you have to start and create the connection. He doesn't mention any of that. Umistimus l'shoinai behilchos Yesodei HaTorah. Mashma that the Rambam does not hold to this condition, and it's based on the Zohar. There are a few places in Zohar where it says that there can be revelation in Chutz La'aretz if the Yidden need it. The Zohar says clearly that there could be revelation in Chutz La'aretz if the Yidden need it. It's a Zohar. So the Rebbe is learning here that the Rambam paskins like the Zohar against the Gemara. Now hold on, that's a bit of a no-no. You know, we had a shear.
Go back to that whole shear and reverse it. Reverse the rules.
Or
Shear about who can overrule what.
no, to pass like a Zohar against a clear Gemara.
That's the one.
No. Rabbi Yosef Kaira, who loves the Zohar, says if it's clear. But we saw from Rabbi Elimelech of Lizhensk, he said by that debate, it's a machlokes. The Gemara about Esther says you can have an. According to the shit that she was a girl, shvach. But I'll tell you the truth. Hold on. By the way, hold on. You understand? Hold on. The Baal Shem Tov very much desired to go to Eretz Yisroel. Yeah. Now you get a bit of understanding why. There's Hashras Hashchina.
The Chaim stopped him.
But the Shechina was in.
Why the Chaim stopped?
Where is the Shechina come out?
What with the dream with Reb Gershon Kittever?
The Baal Shem Tov was stopped in Istanbul and sent R Chaim Kadosh a letter. R Chaim Kadosh sent him back, said, "I see your whole body here, besides for your feet. That means you can't get here."
All right. The Pashas, the main story of the Baal Shem. The Pashas, that story of the Baal Shem Tov forgetting everything happened after the R Chaim passed away.
There's two stories, a couple stories about it.
I know. There's a few stories. I know. Okay, one. He also went much earlier. He went to visit. He went to. Yes, that's true. But there were a few times he tried to go. Anyway.
Where did they wanted to go because of that reason?
For the Or Chaim?
No, that he wanted to go because of.
Oh no. We don't know, but I'm saying the fact is we know that you want to see God. Eretz Yisroel is the place to be. The Alter Rebbe wanted to go. He stopped last moment. The Vilna Gaon very much wanted to go.
I want to go.
No, Baal Shem Tov was Moshe Nefesh to go. The Vilna Gaon, they were both, and not just that, both of them, they're Talmidim. The Baal Shem Tov had a whole group of Talmidim that ended up going to Eretz Yisroel before the Alter Rebbe with Mendel Haradoka, years before. The Baal Shem Tov had a whole kvutz of Talmidim that went. The Vilna Gaon had a whole kvutz of Talmidim that went. And I think no doubt, besides for the mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael, like the Ramban, etc., there's also an Indian of Gili Elikus. So, but the Rebbe says that the Rambam goes like the Zohar against the Gemara. The truth is, if you look in the Mechilta we mentioned in Parshas Boi, which says that Moshe was able to have prophecy outside Yisrael because Yidden hadn't gone there yet, the Mechilta there does bring an opinion that the Eibishter reveals to people outside Eretz Yisrael. There is a Tana who holds that way. I couldn't get the whole Mechilta on the paper, it's too long, but there is an opinion who holds in the Mechilta, it's Machlokes Tanoim. There's one opinion who says that Yechezkel was only able to see because he saw one. Other opinion says no, it's because he was by the river. It's by the river. There are certain places in Chutz La'aretz which they're a gateway to heaven. There's an opinion who holds that. And that's why Daniel speaks about where he was by his prophecies. The actual location you are is very specific, it's very negate. These are portholes to be able to get prophecy even outside Eretz Yisroel. So maybe the Rambam holds like that, I don't know. The Rambam doesn't say you need to be in a certain place either. But it's funny, the Rambam to go like the Zohar against the Gemara. But what's the Rebbe saying? That we don't hold like this Gemara. Meaning the Rashba's kasha, that how could you be a Novai outside Eretz Yisroel? The Rambam! R Avraham Abulafia was a big fan of the Rambam. His whole life was Mer Nevuchim the Rambam. So that's it. According to the Rambam, he could be a good Navi. According to the Rambam, he's a good Navi. So that's answer number one. Answer number one is the Rebbe said it's mashma from the Rambam. Do we go like the Zohar? There could be prophecy outside Eretz Yisroel. Finished.
Position was not so much that he was out of Eretz Yisrael, was it?
That was number four. That was one of his kashas. One of his
Is
kashas.
the Gemara paskening halacha when it's saying there's no navi outside Eretz Yisrael?
It's telling you a fact. It's telling you a fact.
What's a nafka all halacha? Can you prove that somebody's a navi?
Nafka mina, if you have to listen to the Navi, what do you mean? If the guy's a Navi or not?
Say somebody's a navi sheker just because he's having the outside.
Why Navi Sheker? Say Navi Emes and you have to follow him. Why? Say Navi Emes and Elov Tishmo and you're going to follow him. Like the Rebbe.
So you can right away say Navi Sheker.
Oh, that's what you're saying. Oh. I thought, yeah.
Say that.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Rashba was saying.
He's saying that
You can't be a Navi, so if you can. No, I was saying that if you can have Nevuahs and if the guy, then there's a mitzvah to follow the guy. Comes the Rambam in number 13, his famous letter Egeres Taimon. This is a story which in many versions of the letter is not there. The Rebbe though quotes it in the Sikha, notes in a footnote, he notes it in a Sikha, in Chelik Yudalad and Shoftim. He notes in a footnote that many versions don't have it. But guys, this is the story. Are you ready? The Rambam is writing that before Mashiach comes, prophecy will return. He gets it from a Nevuah to Bilam. Yeah. Bilam said, Ka'es ye'omer le'yankiv le'Yisrael mo po'al kel. Bilam said that in the year 2488. He was saying in around the same amount of years, Yidden will hear prophecy again. 2488, you double it, that's going to be the year. So it was a couple years after the Rambam passed away. But the Rambam says, I was makabel, this is when prophecy will return. So look at number 13. The Rambam says about 50 years ago, Be'erech, a guy came from Dara to Eretz Andalusia, that's in Spain. Ish Chosid V'nai holy man. We're number 13. He was from Chachmei Yisroel. His name was Moshe Dari. He came to learn Torah by Rabbi Yosef Hablevi Ibn Migash. That was the Rebbe of the Rambam's father, Reb Maimon, the Ri Migash. Asher Shoma Higia Aleichem, that people had heard about him, so they came from far. Afterwards, this Reb Moshe went back, Shav L'Merk, he went back to the Eretz HaMayrev, he went to Fez, to Pas, he went to Fez, Morocco. And the people gathered him because of his chassidus, his mile, and his Torah. And he told them Mashiach's already been revealed. Okay, this is the Rambam says 50 years before, so you're talking around the year 1150. Mashiach's already revealed himself. And that Hashem told this Rav Moshe this in a dream. But this Rav Moshe didn't say he was Mashiach, like this Meshuggah. The Rambam is talking about some other Meshuggah who was going around in Taimon saying he was Mashiach. This Rav Moshe just said Mashiach has already appeared. The Dovak boy, they cleved to him and they believed his stories. My father, Reb Maimon, they warned the people, don't follow him. And he made a gzeira lazer to leave him. But only a few people listened to my father. Rak ma'atim shomel udvarav. Ruba, most of them, almost all of them went after this Rav Moshe. They mamish thought this guy is the guy. Afterwards, this Rav Moshe started to prophesy dvarim sheniskaimu be'emes. He started to give prophecy and all came true. Min hagay hayalem, he would tell the people, hiskabtzu l'moch, get together tomorrow and this is going to happen.
This is against what the Rambam writes though about Mashiach, about proving somebody's Mashiach. He doesn't have to do these things.
This guy never said he was Mashiach. He was just being a Navi. Being a Navi. He was being a Navi. Ube'emes kain haya hadavar, whatever he said came true. Pa'amachas, one time he said that this week there's going to be motor soya, there's going to be a storm of rain like there was today. The tiftuf of dam, it's going to be red like blood. And he said, and this is the sign that Hashem nasati moifsim, that Hashem said, I'll give moifsim, dom va'esh, find there's a pasuk. There's going to be blood and fire in there and ashan inside the rain. And it was in Cheshvan. It was a geshem chazak ma'id, heavy rain, fell down that week and the water was red. Mamish, like he said, as if it was mixed with cement. This Maifas proved to Eine Koil that he was a Navi Belishum Suffolk. That he's a Navi, fact. Says the Rambam, Dover ze Eino Minanim, it's not impossible mitzad Yisrael Torah. It's definitely possible. I hear it. Like I told you that the Nevuah will return before Bias Mashiach. Now, you know what happened? Then, unfortunately, there was not a happy ending. A very unhappy ending. The Kasha, most of the people fulfilled his words. He told them that Mashiach is going to be revealed the night of Pesach that year. He told everyone to sell their homes and borrow lots of money, go into Choiv to the Yishmaelim. They should buy things for they should buy something worth one dinner for 10 dinarim, because after Pesach they're never going to see the Yishmaelim again. So they'll buy on credit, but no difference, because come Pesach we're out of here. They did everything he advised them. Pesach came, nothing happened. Nis'alfu hanoshim, the people, they fainted, because most of them had sold their homes incredibly cheap, and others had borrowed in tremendous chayvus. And when the sheker was known, when the goyim all heard about it, they wanted to kill him, but they couldn't find him. And he went to Eretz Yisroel, and he died there. Yehi Zichrei Baruch. Kefi she'amru, this is what people that saw him that traveled told me, that Niba al kol ma'ashiyach do the matter, that even after he traveled, everything he prophesied came true. Dover gadol v'dover katan, except that one thing. So, an abysmal mess it ended up. This is the story the Rambam writes in his Egeres Teiman.
He still says
the Rambam says you can have a Navi.
He still says he's Zichrei Baruch.
Yeah, because the guy was a great man. Whatever.
So he made one Nevuah up, but the rest of them were real.
I mean, he made it up. He thought. You think Nevuahs are simple? They're all in Mishalim, and the guy have to try and work out the mashal. He was sure it meant that, and it didn't. It's a little scary. It's a little frightening.
His wife was in real estate.
So you're telling me it's possible for a Navi to misinterpret his Nevuah, and why would, so he wouldn't be alive as a Navi Sheker, but he would still
so that's a shaila of a Navi Sheker. Why can't the Navi say, "Chob gazay gemeint"? I thought that's what it was. I didn't lie. I thought I was
wrong
mistaken.
Interpretation.
It's a frightening story, but I'm not quoting it to frighten us. I'm quoting it because the Rambam said to have a Navi these days in Morocco, in Spain, no problem. And the funny, and so it's outside Eretz Yisroel. So the Rebbe said in number 11, the Rambam doesn't hold to that. Doesn't hold to that. Like the Zohar. So that would be one answer. How R Avraham Abulafia was a Navi against all of the Rashba's kashas is that we don't go like the Gemara number 3. The reason Yechezkel prophesied today is not because he started in Eretz Yisroel, but it's because you don't need to be in Eretz Yisroel. That's number 1. And okay, let's go. Join me in number 14. Number 14 is a Gemara that appears many times in Shas. Tan Rabban. Okay, almost done. Mishameisu neviim ha'achreinim. When the latter prophets died, the last 3 prophets were Chagai, Zechariah, and Malachi. Malachi passed away around 40 years into the second Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash was built in the year 3408 of the Yiddish accounting, about 3,300 years ago. 40 years into that, 3448, exactly 1,000 years after the Yidden left Mitzrayim, Malachi passes away. And that's when Alexander of Macedonia, we had a whole shir about that, Alexander of Macedon's rise came together with the cessation of prophecy. But the Brisa says when they died, Nistalka Ruach HaKodesh Misra, Ruach HaKodesh left the Jews. The Afal became nonetheless, Hoyumishtamshin Bebaskol, they used the Baskol. Even after Ruach HaKodesh left, a Baskol was still in usage. What does a Baskol mean? Let's just finish this and we'll see. Pa'amachas, it once happened, they were sitting in the Ali, in the attic of Beis Guria B'Yerichai. And a Baskol came down from heaven and said, Yesh kan echad, there's somebody, Sheroi, that's fitting Shetishral of Shechina. Now this is in Eretz Yisroel. There's someone who's fitting for the Shechina to rest in him, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Ela she'ein doiroi zakar lekach. But because the generation is not fit, it can't happen.
There's nothing to do with Eretz Yisroel.
This is in Yerichai. It's in Yerichai. No. Right, so there's a different issue. So what? Fine. Nosnu chachomis eneim behillel hazar. The Baskel didn't say who. Everyone knew who it was. It was Hillel. Now Hillel is 300 years after Chag Zechariah Malachi died. Hillel is 100 years before the Churban of the second Beis Hamikdash. Chag Zechariah Malachi, they set up the second Beis Hamikdash. And yet it says here that the Shechina was ready to go. It was a generation that wasn't worthy. Ukeshemes, when he died, Amrulov, they said about him, Hi Chassid, Hi Anav, he was a Chassid. Whoa, he was a Chassid. He was a humble man. He was a Talmud of Ezra. Not literally, he's 400 after Ezra, but 300, he lived like Ezra. And
Is he a descendant of Ezra also?
was he a Kohen? Ezra's a Kohen. He was a Kohen. So this Gemara is a few times in Shas. It's in Yuma, it's in Sanhedrin, and it's Soita. 3 times in Shas, so it's an important piece of information that gets repeated, so we should know. But it's funny, on the one hand it says that when the last Nevi'im died, Ruach HaKodesh left, but then it says the Shechina was ready to rest on Hillel if only his generation would have been worthy. Well, how do you make sense of that? I thought Ruach HaKodesh completely left. Look in number 15. What does the word Baskel mean? After Chag Zechariah Malachi passed away, the Braisa says now they use the Baskel. Says Tosfos, Yesh Oimim, some say, Shaloi Hayu Shoyim Kol. They didn't hear a voice come down from heaven. It's not like we're all sitting there and all of a sudden there's another voice. Elo mitoich oisoi koil, from the voice from heaven, yoytze kolach, another voice comes out. Like sometimes adam maka bekoyach, you bang something, and you hear a koil acher yoytze milamerachik.
Echo?
I guess an echo. The oisa, the second voice is what they used to hear. Lekach koirin oisa bas koil.
What was the first?
The first voice is the voice from heaven talking.
What? That is the basket.
No, that's the koil. That's a koil from heaven.
They just heard the echo of that.
A voice of heaven.
What the Eibishter
What's
was
speaking? There's no voices in heaven?
Lightning?
No, a malach. Well, what did it sound like?
Not these words you're saying? Well, what's the chiddush? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, no.
Saying.
No, the spiritual voice is a voice that came out from heaven. That they didn't hear. They didn't experience that. But there was a secondary voice, like an echo from that. That's what they heard. That's the bas. The door. The basko means the daughter of the voice.
Is in Nevuah Kivu.
Maybe.
Next, they're hearing stuff from heaven.
Yeah, but they heard it from heaven, but they didn't hear heaven itself.
Right.
Okay.
That's what Taisa is saying. So here's the thing. It sounds like this Brais is saying, in the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash, all prophecy ceased. The truth is, there is an idea that there was only prophecy during the first Beis Hamikdash. Go back to the other page, number 10 at the bottom. The Rambam in the Nevuah Nevuchim says, the Rambam in the Nevuah Nevuchim writes, Oy Timtzi, you're going to find some prophets prophesied midas man achas, after the Churban Beis Hamikdash, for about another 100 years there are prophets, because during the 70 years in between the two Batei Mikdash, and then another 30, 40 years. But then the Nevuah nifsaka mehem forever, v'lo yismidlem, it didn't continue. Ba'avor mikrish nischad, because of the new circumstances. You know what the new circumstances was? National depression. You can only have the Shekhinah rest on you if you are in a happy mood. Only if you're in a happy mood.
We're happy.
Elisha needed prophecy, he couldn't get it. But Vahaya Kanagin Hamanagin, when they played music, then all of a sudden the Shekhinah rested upon him.
What happened then?
So V'zoisi Asiba Ha'atzmis, this is the reason why there was Hefsek Nevuah at the time of exile without any suffix, because of the Atzlus, the laziness and the depression that people have. When the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we never recovered from that blow. There's a national depression since we lost the first Beis Hamikdash, and therefore that's why Nevuah was depleted. So why did it go for another 100 years? There is a Maimer Chazal that says, before the Churban of the first Beis Hamikdash, Hashem spoke to Yirmiyah, and he told him all the things he's going to tell to Daniel, Yechezkel, Chag Zechariah, Malachi, etc., etc. He told them all to him, just in order to get it all in before the Churban. But everything that happened after was really just the tail of the first Beis Hamikdash. So it all kind of ended by the Chag Zechariah, Malachi. So the first Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. 70 years of Galus Bavel, you still had Yirmiyah alive, and Yechezkel, and Daniel, etc., etc. And then Chag Zechariah, Malachi take us into 40 years of the second Beis Hamikdash, then it's all over. So Wait a second. Really? So Nevuah was all over? Nevuah was all over? So look at number 16. Number 16 is another sikh of the Rebbe, where the Rebbe says like this: the Nevuah loy bottle. The Gemara doesn't say that the Nevuah became bottle with the Saga, Zechariah, Malachi. The loy nifsik, it wasn't stopped, the revelation of prophecy. It says nistalik. The Brisa said nistalik. You know what nistalik means? It was removed not because the world can't handle prophecy. It's because the people are different. Kivan she'ein b'nei adam, there aren't people which are roy to receive the prophecy. Avo be'im, but if there would be people who are fitting to receive the prophecy, the Ruach HaKodesh and the prophecy would work even today. Al pi hanal, right? Meturit Sumuvan, the Rambam, before we said the Rambam doesn't bring Eretz Yisroel, the Rambam discusses all about prophecy as if it's still current and existing and it's reachable. The Rambam does not hint in any way that it's no longer attainable. Avsham of our Kamagan Protim about Nevuah, he doesn't mention anywhere that Nevuah doesn't exist anymore since the Nevi'im Achronim passed away till Mashiach comes. Well, Befrat, exactly, that the Rambam does discuss cases where there may or may not be Nevuah, but he doesn't mention anywhere that there's an issue of Bizman Hazeh, that there's no more Beis HaMikdash, we're in Golos. He doesn't mention that. Va'adarabba, after Shumayna Hatnoim and Itzrachim L'Nevuah, after the Rambam said if someone fulfills all of the necessary requirements to be receptacle for prophecy, Messiah, the Rambam finishes, Miyad Ruach HaKodesh will rest on him. However, you see, says the Rebbe, the Nevuah depends only on what the Rambam counts, not B'shum T'nai Acher, nothing else. So the Rambam holds that when the price is Nistalk, it means on the whole, it's not around anymore because who's going to have... But if you do find someone, they could be a Navi even today. That's the Rebbe's opinion. And that's why the Rebbe learned it's not a problem to say in different generations there were individuals. What the Bryce is talking about, like, the period of prophecy kind of came to an end. The Ruach HaKodesh kind is now hovering above because who's going to be a Navi? But here and there, you could have somebody. You could have someone. So,
it says often based that the Nevuah came back already. We see it clearly by the figure of it.
Yeah, sure, of course. Sure. Yeah, sure applies by the Rabbeim. The Tzemach Tzedek once said about the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid that God revealed himself to them. Asher aleim niglu Elokim. God revealed himself to them. The Tzemach Tzedek once had a chassid who came to Yechidus. He said, Rebbe, I have too many questions. I find it too hard to believe anymore. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, do you trust me? Trust you with all my heart. The Tzemach Tzedek said, I saw him. He said, I saw him. So I saw him. So if you trust me, I saw him.
Gee.
So you could answer very simple. Just like when it comes to the periods, we say that generally the Tekufa, as we refer to it, the era of prophecy came to an end. But you can have individuals who have it today. I would say the same thing, even according to the Gemara in Moed Katan. The area of prophecy is Eretz Yisroel. That's the area of prophecy. But outside Eretz Yisroel, it's not the area of prophecy, but you could have here or there. I think you can give the exact same answer that we give to Zman, you can give to Mokum. You know, the Gemara says in the Dorm another thing, that the Shechina only rests on someone who's a Chacham, a Gibor, you have to be mighty, an Onav, humble, and an Osher, and very wealthy. And we learn them all from Moshe. Moshe was a Chacham, Moshe was mighty, etc. The Rosh, in his commentary to that Gemara in Nedarim, says what the Gemara means is for the Shechina to rest b'kviyas. B'kviyas means right. But for a one-off, a person doesn't have to have those conditions to be a one-off. A one-off, even someone who doesn't have those could be a one-off. So I would tell you, that Gemara that in the Nedarim the Rosh is talking about is that when the Eibishter selects a person, you need to have this criteria if you want to have it b'kviyas. But for a one-off, you don't have to have that criteria. So I would say so too. When the Gemara says that Eretz Yisroel is the place where the Eibishter rests his prophecy, But you can have a one-off. But a one-off could be a person has it his entire life. Because as far as a diaspora, he's a one-off. The Gemara in the Dorm is talking about a person. If you want to have a person and you constantly want to have the revelation, you have to have those criteria. If you don't, you yourself can only have a one-off revelation. But here when we're talking about parts of the earth, you could say the Shekhinah is in Eretz Yisroel. A one-off, you can have a guy in Spain, but he could have it his entire life. His entire life is considered a one-off compared to the millions of people around him that don't have. Right.
Any one of those
categories
could be a one-off.
Exactly. So with that Rosh, and especially with the Rebbe's word over here, where the Rebbe says it clearly about Zaman, there's an era, so I say so too, there's an area, and then outside you can have a one-off. And the last thing I want to say is just the following, that there are many levels between prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh. You find all of these words, Ruach HaKodesh, Bas Kol, Nevuah. What exactly are all these things? Look at number 17, just a shtickle Gemara. The Gemara says that Afal Pisha, this is a Gemara in Baba Basra Daf Yud Beis, even though prophecy was removed from the prophets, Mina Chachomim Loi Nitla, the wise men still have prophecy. Again, the Gemara says, even though prophecy was removed from the prophets, Mina Chachomim Loi Nitla, the Chachomim still have prophecy. Meaning if someone's a Chacham, he can still be a prophet today. If someone, the idea of a Navi who's not a Chacham, that you don't have anymore. A prophet who's not wise, you once had that, not anymore.
What is a Navi who's not a Chacham?
Okay, I guess it's a special level of a Chacham, but you still have Chacham with prophecy. So Amar Meimer says that a Chacham is greater than a Navi. And he says, because the Pasuk says, V'Navi levav chachma, that the Navi has a heart of a wise man. Mi nitla b'mi, who do you describe like who? You always describe, Heva omer kata nitla b'gadol. You want to describe the smaller with the greater. It's when you say the Navi has the heart of the wise, you compliment someone by relating to someone who's gadol. So you see, the Chacham is greater than Nevuah. Now the truth, a Meimer statement is really a different idea. A Chacham versus a Navi, a Chacham is better. But the Gemara right before saying even more, you know why a Chacham is better than a Navi? Because the Chacham still has Nevuah. The Navi would have lost it. Amar Abai says, Teid, I'll prove it to you. Amar Gavra Rabba Milsa, you can have one Rav saying a Svara, Mr. Amr Mishmei the Gavra Rabba, somebody else says the same thing. How do two people say the exact same thing? They must be both in tune with a higher level of knowledge. Rava said, nah, my kasha, Dilma Travayo b'nechad Mazlin, maybe both of them think the same way. So rather, Rava says, I'll bring you the proof. Amr Gavra Rabba Milsei, Mr. Amr Mishmei the Rabbi Kiva Bar Yosef Kavase. And Amir says ABC, and someone says, Rabbi Kiva said that so many years ago. Now, no one thinks like Rabbi Akiva. So if you were able to nail that on the head, you must have heavenly inspiration. Rav Ashi said, no, my kasha. Rabbi Akiva's taka greater than Amoraim, but maybe in this thing, they thought the same way. Dilma lahanilsa bar mazlo. Rather, Rav Ashi says, I'll bring you the proof. And Amira says a whole thing, and then we find out it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. How did he nail that on the head? So Frekta Gemara, Dilma Kasuma Ba'aruba, maybe it's like a blind man in the what the Aruba is the light, no, the skylight. You're trying to find the skylight. So says Gemara, no, but the guy gave Tam Yov, he gave a logic. He wasn't a blind man stumbling. This guy gave us a halacha with a logic, and then you find halacha Moshe Sinai. Look at Rashi number 18. Rashi is a fascinating thing. V'lav taima kom, he said a logic in his thing. V'kivan da'amar taima, since he said a logic, he's not like a blind man who's trying to go down the skylight and punkti got lucky. Rather, to svara from his heart, which comes with nevuah. In other words, it's a logic that he got, he was divinely inspired. It's nevuah, but God didn't come and speak to him. In his mind, there's an idea which is clear to him, it's a prophecy. It's not a vision. It's not a vision, but it's nevuah. So that's how Rashi learns the Gemara. There's a fascinating Gemara because this Gemara is talking about Amoraim. In other words, that even now nevuah is around, and Rashi says what it means is it's not that God speaks to you, but there's an uplake. It's a message from God that just comes to you. You just get the bottom line. The message is in your mind.
This contradicts number 3 then.
Doesn't contradict.
There is Nevuah.
No, it's a different level. It's a different level. Join me in number 19. The last thing, it's a lower level of Nevuah. Listen, the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim has a famous part where he lists levels of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah. There's many levels. Look at number 19. This is from Reb Reuven Margolis, who wrote... He took the Sefer Shailas Tshuvas Min HaShamayim from one of the Baalei Tosfos, Rabbi Yankov of Marvi, and in the beginning he wrote an introduction, and the Rebbe, in many places in his Sichos, he references this introduction. Whenever he wants to get into the specifics of Nevuah versus Ruach HaKodesh, he always says, look in Margolis' introduction. I've seen it many, many times everywhere. It's a beautiful introduction.
It's not all bad.
No. Oh, by the way, in his introduction, the Rebbe quotes, this Margolis quote, he says, my relative, Ephraim Zalman Margolis of Brod, he quotes a vision he had in a dream, that on Purim to get drunk, ad lo yada, means until but not including. Meaning get drunk until but not reaching the point of not knowing the difference of Or, Haman and Baruch Mordechai.
That's right.
Right, well, about dreams. That's why he has his whole introduction there. Reb Reuven Margolis, most of the introductions talking about chalomus and if you can base halacha based on dreams. But in it he discusses dreams, baskol, Ruach HaKodesh, Nevuah, and there's one little piece over here. He says in number 19. Okay, look in Shmois Rabbah Perek Lamed Beis. In the Eibush that tells the Yidden that I'm going to send a malach in front of you. Hashem says, Hipaltem atzmechem, you guys lowered yourself. Probably after the ego. Until now, this is a Medrash Rabbi you used Ruach HaKodesh. Now you're going to be led by a malach. The mashma from here, it's pretty clear from here that a revelation of a malach is lower than the words Ruach HaKodesh. Ba'oid Rabbeinu HaGadol on the Rambam Moreh Nevuchim, the Rambam says fakert, Hamadrego hel yoyne b'maris hanavim, the highest madrega in Nevuah is if you see the malach speaking to you. And that's how the Gilui Malach is a darga yoser than Ruach HaKodesh. So the Rambam says Malach is greater than Ruach HaKodesh. The Medrash Rabbah says Ruach HaKodesh is greater than a Malach. Ka'omer, like I said, there are many madregis in Ruach HaKodesh and a revelation of Malachim. There's so many levels in each one, it's not the same thing. The Baal Shem Tov spent 10 years learning under Achia Shiloni. The Ramchal, famously, had his Magidim when he was 20 years old. It was Shavuos, 1727. He was 20 years old, and he's in Padua with his chevra of Kabbalists. He was the head, and all of a sudden he has his head down, and he has a revelation. And a malach starts to speak from his own voice box. But he doesn't see the malach. This is a different type of revelation. The idea of a magid coming to you is a neshama or a malach from heaven. But by the Ramchal, he described that it spoke from his voice box. By the Yosef Kar in the night of Shuz, the voice box. But the Baal Shem Tov is seeing Achia Shaloni.
He also learned at the Magid, no?
You shouldn't.
Or he didn't see him.
The description that we have was that it would speak to him. Don't know if you saw.
Ah, yeah.
What about Elionavi?
So Elionavi can come in a body. Elionavi is a tough one because he can always come in his body. You have the Vilna Gaon. One of the issues the Vilna Gaon had with Chassidus is the fact that it's based on receiving from heaven through a magid, through Achia Shaleni, not a malach, is a neshama. Fine. But what was the Vilna Gaon's problem?
Like Elionavi,
Reb Chaim of Volozhin says that the Vilna Gaon himself said he was offered to learn with a magid from heaven, but he didn't want, because he wanted all of his learning to be his own haravanya, his own toil, and his own success, and his own perseverance, etc., etc. But and the Vilna Gaon felt that authentic learning has to come bottom up, not to come from heaven. But not that the Vilna Gaon didn't believe that there could be a magid. They definitely could, and he says he was offered. Reb Nachum of Chernobyl, the famous story. Reb Nachum of Chernobyl gets a knock on his door one night. There's an angel there from heaven to teach him. He said, I always ask my Rebbe first. So he went to the Maggid of Mizrish. The Maggid said, that Malach came from the dark side. So the Chassidim asked Reb Nachum, how did you know that you had to run and ask the Maggid? So he said, I saw that this Malach was sad. I saw the face was sad. And that's why I knew something was up. If it's truly a message of God, there's only joy. There's a smile. Sad. It was sad, right? Beautiful thing. So, in other words, you have...
Things, I don't know, what did he see? Malachim are not physical.
Neither was Reb Nachum of Chernobyl. The famous story. No, the famous story. They never quoted the story. Chalav, what's Chalav Akum? That if a guy milks it, the Ein Yisroel Re'eyu, and a Yid didn't see. There's a taich a Yid's not able to see. Reb Nachum of Chernobyl was once sitting in front of a glass of milk. He couldn't see it. Milk that was milked by a guy, Yid can't see. Reb Nachum was once in somebody's house for Shabbos, and Friday night, it was late at night, he walked around, he was stumbling, and he crashes around, he's crashing around the house. He was a big guy, Reb Nachum, right, from the Omen Yeshmei Rabbah. He's crashing around the stairs, so the Balabos gets up, and he sees this light, and he sees Reb Nachum's walking. He asked Reb Nachum, what are you doing? Reb Nachum, I can't see a thing. What happened was, there wasn't original candles, they went out, and someone relit them on Shabbos. He couldn't see it, Said, he can see a malach. Anyhow, so there's so many levels of Ruach HaKodesh and Nevuah, etc., that it's very simple that the Gemara in number 3 is saying, in Eretz Yisroel, there's something called Tishre Olav Shechina, that's a certain level of Nevuah. And maybe that's taka limited to Eretz Yisroel, unless you're like Yechezkel and you start in Eretz Yisroel. But if you're outside, maybe that level you can't reach. But there's so many other levels you can. There's so many other levels that you can. This R Avraham Abulafia wasn't saying that he was like Yechezkel, right? But a lower level you could reach. Very simple. Very simple. So in other words, we have a few answers to the question was, L'chaira, the Gemara says the only way Yechezkel could prophesy today, hey Tammuz, was because he started in Eretz Yisroel. If you don't, there's no way you could receive Nevuah. So how do you have Avraham Abulafia? How do you have this guy in the story of the Rambam and of the Rabbeim? And like the Rebbe said about the Frierdiker Rebbe, that he was Mamash Hanavi. How do you have that? So answer number 1 is, we don't paskin like this Gemara. We go like the Rebbe who says that the Rambam paskins like the Zoyer, the Rambam Zigeres Taimon. We said in the Mechilta there's such an opinion like that. Also the Kuzari said it doesn't have to be Mamash in Eretz Yisroel, as long as it's for Eretz Yisroel. Anyone that's potential to be the ultimate redeemer is just like the Kuzari said about Moshe. He's prophesying to get us back to the Holy Land. So then with the Kuzari you have a simple answer as well. Right? The Baal Shem Tov's prophecy was to reveal Chassidus, to get the world ready for the final redemption. That's no different than Yechezkel and Daniel that the Kuzari said that's considered for the sake of Eretz Yisroel. You'd see, all the more so. And then we gave the answer that just like in time, there was an era of prophets and afterwards there can be individuals, so too there's an area, but outside that you can have one-offs here or there, it's not a problem. And then the final answer that there's so many different levels of Ruach HaKodesh and Baskol and Nevuah that the Gemara could be speaking about a very specific level. But lower levels are attainable. But that would make it more understood why the Baal Shem Tov desired to go to Eretz Yisroel. If Taka only lower levels are attainable outside, then that's how you want to go. There's a Pashat Ashra Sashchina. You should know many of the greatest Yidden had strong desires. There was a movement, 300 Baalei Toisus went up there to go to Eretz Yisroel. There was always a movement, the Ramban, there was always a movement to go to Eretz Yisroel.
The Rabbeim, which one was it?
The Baal Shem Tov, and the Alter Rebbe. The Tzemach Tzedek wanted to go, sure. They all, we mentioned that. The Frierdiker Rebbe was there once.
Yeah. 6th step.
Right, so maybe the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he came to America, his Nevuah had that added spice of what it says about Yechezkel once he was there. But the Rebbe was never there. The Rebbe was never there. So listen, the Rebbe himself says that the Rambam, that's it. You don't need. But l'chayra, once you say there's different levels, and l'chayra, that raya from the Rambam falls off. The Rambam is talking about prophecies attainable everywhere. The fact that Yisrael gets you a higher level, maybe the Rambam didn't bring that. That's not.
He did it?
He doesn't have to bring that.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to. No, in other words, maybe the whole thing kind of falls off. Maybe the Zohar is not arguing with the Gemara. You can have prophecy in Chutz La'aretz, but the special level of Ashuras Ashchina was talking about,
That you only have.
and that's Rabbi Abba's Hesped. He's saying Rav Huna was ready for Ashuras Ashchina, the greatest of the greatest, but Bavel caused it, he couldn't get there. Okay, all right, we will...